everything that's common to you should be done for God's glory. The world does those same things, but they don't do it for God's glory. So you think about your family, you think about your marriage, you think about your children, you think about the dynamics. All of those things should be done with the purpose, like it says in the man code, successfully for the glory of God. I want you to think about something. The other day I was talking to my grandsons and it was like, every day we got to do something great. We got to do something great. Well, I realized I was creating a false narrative because greatness is also known in the common. Several years ago, I backpacked into this basin way up in the mountains, and I had been in there the previous year, and just by the way, the condition of the trail and stuff, I doubt anybody had been in there for 365 days. And I'm kind of like walking around and I'm just sitting there seeing all these different things. God has these flowers up there in these basins that no one else sees. You say, it's just a flower. No, these are flowers. These are wild flowers up in the mountains that God puts there and not one other person sees them. You say, why does he have this flower here? For his glory and for his honor. You are planted in a certain place for his glory and his honor. And then you sit there and you think about, like you take a picture of a field of flowers up in the mountains that no one has seen for a whole year. And you take that picture and there's all of these flowers, but your camera focuses in on just one. And then you take the picture, then you take that one flower and you put it in your hat or you put it in your jacket or something. I mean, it's so, there's hundreds of them. There's thousands of them in the basin. And yet that one you select. Listen, God has selected you. The things that are common, do them well for God's glory. But what I want you to catch in this passage, we're not talking about something common. We're talking about doing something exceptional for God. And so as a student, before Jared and I were married, it's like, God, there's got to be something that's bigger that I can do for you, that others haven't thought about, others haven't dreamed about. And so I just started thinking, what is it that's really important to God? The worship of God is important, right? That's what David was focused on. And so I just started thinking, God, what would it be? And so I started making lists. And so sometimes I did them by the year, and sometimes, this is 2006. For the glory of God, 2006. Enhancing the pleasure of God. Then I talk about my spiritual life. Just things, God, would you let me do this? Would you let me do that? My own spiritual life. And then I have my family. I got Jera there and my daughter and my sons and each of them, certain things I wanted to talk to them about, read about, so forth. Then my ministry things. All of us should have a ministry, right? Because all of us should be serving Jesus. And then I remember at one point in my life, all of the big goals that I had set for my life. I was 32 and God had given them all to us. And I was kind of went into a depression. And I was talking to my sister and Franny, and she said, and I said, I'm just so depressed. It's God's let me, everything is done. She goes, get some new goals for Jesus. Oh, I love my sister, right? And so I came up with some new goals and some just, not just the normal sort of goals or the common ones, but things that were really special. I wrote down some crazy things that I would never think that God would let us do. And here they are on this paper. I'm not going to read them to you because quite honestly, they're between me and Jesus. But I'm going to give you one because I want you to catch some of these. For me, it was Lord, I want to help. I want to assist in training and exposing 20,000 pastors in Africa to expository preaching. That doesn't mean I had to do it all, but it means I don't know if I fund that. I don't know if I help that. I don't know if I carry the suitcases for the guys. Whatever that means, I just want to assist in some way to make sure that happens. And I'll never forget when that number hit 50,000 for me personally. Doesn't mean I necessarily did everything, right? But I helped in the assisting of that. And as soon I went back and I looked at this and I was like, Lord, I prayed for 20 and you gave this. I realized that God does exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. I look back over these lists and I sit there and think, Mark, you had so little faith. You should have asked for 3 times as much. I think you're going to ask God for things and he's going to give you more than that. There's other things on this list that God may not let me do. And I look at that and maybe it's like David. He just says, I'm glad it's in your heart, David. It blesses me that it was in your heart, but I'm not going to let you do it. Someone else is going to do that. And you know what David did? And we're going to see this in the verses that follow. He doesn't throw a fit. He doesn't that's not fair. You know what he does? He says, hey, okay, one of my descendants is going to do this. I'm going to get all the gold, silver, everything that's necessary. He starts stockpiling all of the stuff for the temple that's to be built. He dies, passes off the scene. Solomon, his son, boom, gets it done. Isn't that awesome? Friends, our children, our grandchildren, are we positioning them to do greater things than us for the glory of God? I pray that that's in your heart, because that was in the heart of David. What I want you to walk away with is this morning. Smell the cedar. Smell the cedar. All the blessings of God. I want you to go home. I want you to think about all the blessings of God. You carry this thing around all week long. Put it someplace where you can smell it. Then you think about the blessings of God, and then take a pin. You can drill a hole in it if you want and put a string on it. I was going to do that for all of you, but after 5 hours and 20 minutes of cutting these things, we gave up. So you guys got the ones with the strings. We didn't get everyone else's done. But keep this thing someplace and smell it and think about David was blessed. And as a result of his gratitude and love for God, God put something great in his heart. Maybe even right on the back of this, that question. So what's in your heart, Mark? What's in your heart, Jera? What's in your heart? You put your name. And see if God doesn't give you something great to do for his name. Jera and I, we have certain financial things. We give 10% to the church and all of that, but there's a financial goal that I have. Lord, would you let me give this much in our life? Would you let us care for this many orphans? Would you let us do that? Friends, you got to have something great in your heart. There's a great Bible camp out in California. It's up by Yosemite. And I'll never forget the first time I went out there. I was meeting with the staff and was speaking at an event there. And they showed me around. It is the biggest Christian camp on the West Coast. But it wasn't always the biggest. In fact, it was started by a couple of farmers down in the valley below. And they just had a heart for God, and they wanted to do something great for God, and they wanted to minister to people in Jesus' name. They'd never preached a sermon. They had never led a song. They didn't have any hits on the top 100 list. They didn't have any of that. They just said, what little bit we got, we want to do something great for God. So they bought a piece of property, and they said, we're going to have a camp up there. And then they set up some tents, and they started building some old shacks, and then they started inviting kids. And one of these old guys, who you will never know his name, would go up above the camp where he can look down at the camp. There's a rock up there. And he would go up there and pray during the summer. And he would say, Lord, thank you for the 50 kids. Thank you for the 25. Thank you for the 50. It was growing, 75 this year. Thank you for those 75 kids this week. But God, would you bless us so that there would be 1,000 kids every week during the whole camping season? So that starts, like May, all the way through October. 1,000 people at this piece of property, learning the scriptures, loving Jesus, changing the world. One old guy you'll never meet. One old farmer, calloused hands, you'll never meet. This summer, they had 1,000 kids every single week. Ask God to put something great in your heart for him.